So we now have a panel session hosted by Izzy Azeri, co-founder of Mabl, one of our event sponsors today, and Izzy will tell you a little bit more about Mabl, I'm sure. His panel is on the subject of transforming testing to thrive in the digital era, and his two guests are Alan Marshall, who's Senior Enterprise Architect at Arch Insurance, and he's based in Birmingham, UK, and Natalie Charlot, Test Management Office Leader at NCR. I didn't actually ask you, Natalie, where you are today.
Yeah, you did.
I'm going to hand over to you, Izzy, to introduce your panel and panelists more thoroughly. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Matthew. Appreciate it, and thank you to everyone who's attending today. I'm really excited to be here. As Matthew mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Mabl. Started the company about 3.5 years ago to really help QA teams transform the way they do testing in this DevOps or digital era. We make it very, very simple to create automated tests in a fraction of the time it takes from more traditional solutions. And we try to really help QA teams identify regressions as quickly as possible. I'm very excited about having the panelists here today. Natalie Charlot from NCR, which is a company you may recognize, and Alan Marshall from a very large insurance company called Arch Insurance. And so the panel today is all about how QA is being transformed to really be successful in this new era of digital transformation. I think that is a topic that's been discussed a lot in the past, but it's even more important now, given the transformation we're going through with the COVID pandemic that's going on. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Natalie to provide an intro, and then Alan, and then we'll dive right into it.
Thank you, Izzy. So I am the leader of the Test Management Office in IT Services at NCR. My role reports to the IT Governance Leader with a dotted line to the Enterprise Business Applications Organization. So the TMO governs the test management processes across the IT organization by applying testing strategies, testing tool and process improvement at the program or application level. So overall, our focus is to ensure that we roll out a quality product to our customers. In a nutshell, so we provide overall the test management leadership in Agile and waterfall software development across multiple platforms. Using, of course, we collaborate with the project management team, BA, developers, product managers, and so on and so forth. So I am very passionate about testing and doing it right the first time. And I am extremely excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
So I'm Alan Marshall. I am the enterprise architect for Arch UK. So Arch is a huge insurance company. We've got a massive presence in the US, but we've also got a presence outside of the US, which is what I'm responsible for from a technology and a strategy perspective. We're very product orientated focused, which is our terminology for Agile. We've split all of our development teams into product teams, and we realize that actually the differentiator for us as an organization is about how we build our bespoke applications and niche offerings into the marketplace that we can differentiate from all of our other customers, right? So to do that, we've got a mixture of agile delivery practices that we put in place. So there's all the buzzwords around DevOps and all that tools and what that is. And part of my remit is how do we look to enable our product teams to automate and deliver things quicker with better quality, with in line and with speed to market that the business demands, sometimes changing direction at the last minute, but still getting that out there and delivered really quickly, and make sure that we can deliver quickly a quality product out to the marketplace that meets all the requirements that we've got. And how do we stay agile but still ensure that we can get that quality out there? Testing is part of every product team that we have. So unlike Natalie, we don't have a real big test department, but we do testing within products and product areas. And I'm going to hopefully talk to you today with Izzy and Natalie about how we do that and some of the challenges and some of the thinking that we're doing. Izzy,
that's great. Yeah, thanks Alan, thanks Natalie. Maybe to start things off, I know I mentioned it earlier, but many of us have gone through digital transformations over the past number of years, right? As we've been digitizing a lot of our applications and customers are accessing our software in more kind of remote ways. But obviously now with COVID, things may have changed or even accelerated. So I'm curious, how have things changed for you from an NCR and Arch perspective when it comes to digital transformation? Can you talk a little bit about that? Oh, Natalie, you're on mute. Just
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we all know that COVID has impacted millions of lives and affected every corner of the world. And this impact forced companies in every single industry to shift priorities and accelerate, like you said, their digital transformation by a few years. So I read that some companies are even doing it by 5 to 10 years, and they were not ready for that. Now, many organizations had to quickly revisit and even reimagine their strategy in the interest of capturing new marketplace opportunities. It is very important that organizations build the necessary operational resilience to survive in this new reality or new norm, as some of us would say it. And so with COVID, COVID did impact every single company. So pretty much you had to course correct and pivot. And so in terms of the transformation at NCR, many new technologies were released to meet the needs of our customers. So for example, in the hospitality industry, we actually rolled out the touchless or contactless technology. What I mean by that is from a customer dining experience, they're not able to see a menu, place an order, and even pay using their mobile device. Another example is in the banking industry. At the beginning of the pandemic, NCR published a banking hardware cleaning guideline with an easy to remember do's and don'ts to help financial institutions reduce their risk. And then they took it to a whole other level and then launched the new antimicrobial coating for their actual hardware. So what I mean by that is you can apply that coating in your hardware, such as your touchscreen, your keypad, your handset, your card reader, entry points, and that can be done by a trained engineer. And it only needs to be reapplied, every 6 months. So they were able to roll out some new technologies there to, in a way, meet or exceed the needs of their customers responding to the COVID era.
Me next, I guess. So sorry. Yeah, I should have just said off mute. So look, COVID has changed a lot of stuff, right? So it's locked businesses into silos a little bit more than you would expect if you were working in an agile community. So what it's put to the strain is just how well we can communicate first and foremost. How quickly do we liaise together? Agile teams think they can accomplish anything, but the minute you put them in separate silos and you put walls up between them and they can't all just have an open Zoom room for everybody all day, conversations become a little bit difficult. It's fine, and what we're starting to find is it's absolutely fine whilst you all know what direction you're traveling in because you've sat down together and you've done that. But the minute something deviates, then you have to have that white wall. I'm an architect, so I'm used to having white wall pens and stuff and talking like that. But the minute you kind of deviate and you have to do something new, getting that scrum team together, getting them digitally together is it works, but it's not that interaction that you get from sitting in an office next to somebody. There's market changes that are coming around for all kinds of things. So Arch in the UK, we're already digitally focused. So I wouldn't say COVID has changed our approach to digital, but it has changed how quickly we've had to act in certain areas of what's happening from a COVID perspective. So most of you won't know anything about the Lloyd's of London insurance market. Most of that work is still done on paper. They do hundreds of millions of pounds worth of transactions written on paper. So that can't happen anymore. So all of a sudden, we've all started scrambling around for, okay, take a picture on your phone, send it in to us, broker rooms where people can come in and collaborate. And it's actually taken us back to how we digitalized the very basic things that we had to do, that we've just taken for granted because we can all go and sit in a bar or sit in an office room together and talk about. And it's how you tackle those things that are kind of coming to the fore. One of the interesting things that we're looking at rolling out very, very quickly now is most people will have looked at track and trace. How do you come into contact with people if you're opening your offices? How do you start to roll something like that out? That has to work first time. you can't get a second chance at that. So that has to work first time. And then you move into simple things like desk booking solutions, home working practices, kind of getting kit out to people, giving them the right tools for the job. And that's often not digital stuff now. That's physical, hands-on, wireless mouses that don't hurt your wrist kind of stuff. So it's changed our focus. But I think, like Natalie says, there's a lot of opportunity out there as well, which is coming now. So being able to react to market change in this COVID world, we'll see, unfortunately, the people that can adapt and change survive, and those that can't either need some extended support or maybe not, so to speak.
Yeah, it really proves that people need to move quickly to adapt in these new eras. And Natalie, Alan, you guys gave a couple of examples of new applications or new things that you launched, whether it's the tracing application or touchless restaurants. So what that's demonstrating, I guess, is that the customer experience is really important, right? The remote customer experience is really important. Has that changed the way you think about quality or the way you implement quality or the tools you use from a quality perspective now versus before? Has that changed your thinking or your processes at all?
Sure. So we must take our customer service to a whole other level as it relates to the COVID era. Many customers are overwhelmed. No CEO on the planet was giving a playbook on how to navigate through a COVID era or a pandemic. So therefore, companies are finding themselves, finding ways to, in a way, go back and replan, right? So I see it as them having, I'll call it 3 plans, okay? So your original 2020 plan, right? Your revised plan after COVID, and then you have the return to office plan, which is, I call it the post-lockdown. I can't say we're out of the pandemic because it's going to take a while. But then that's what I see. That's what I look at it, right? As we begin to go back to the office, we need to have a very solid plan and adhere to, of course, the CDC guidelines. So now, one thing that COVID did is it confirmed the importance of proper testing, ensuring quality. The way we behave here in Georgia, as it relates to COVID, could impact other people in a different state or even different parts of the world, right? So when you're testing guidelines, you have to see it as your CDC rules. And if you don't implement the proper testing best practices, you are exposing yourself to some big risk. So we have to start seeing ourselves like the testing organization as the CDC, right? That's the way I see it. Our approach to quality is of course to meet or even exceed the user experience, right? And it is very important for us to, I would say, adopt the shift left approach, right? Like never before. We need to make that clear to the team. Begin the testing at the requirements level or user story level, right? Implement and reinforce the test-driven development. Engage your customers early. Keep them involved throughout the software development lifecycle. So the shift left testing model is one of the best possible ways to mitigate the issues, right, around not meeting your customer standards and expectations. So shift left enables the project team to test, provide feedback, and then of course get regular reviews going with the customer in order to evolve agility and boost productivity in a way, right? So according to studies, most defects are found at the requirements phase. So people don't think about that, right? They think that you find your defects when you're testing, when you're in execution mode, but guess what? You can start at the requirements phase. Make sure you have some good, solid, testable requirements, and then everything else will fall into place. Not perfectly, of course, so we have testing phase, but if you can start there, then you reduce the number of defects that you'll find as you go through the software development lifecycle. So at the end of the day, the reduction of rework provides much needed time for testers to analyze other requirements and focus on risk-based testing, right? So I cannot drill enough how important shifting left is and starting at the requirements level, because a lot of times when we think of test or testing, we think of execution mode. We need to start when we're in the QA phase or testing, that's when we start that. But definitely, that's my my take on this.
I'm going to be slightly controversial.
Yeah.
So from a quality perspective, if it's customer facing, you can't afford, your reputation can't afford for you to put rubbish out. So that's cool.
Absolutely.
But the mindset from the delivery stuff that we've had to do now means that we've actually had to focus a lot of development on internal apps. And also we've had brokers and we've had people in the marketplace that have just said, please just give me something quick. I don't care if it looks amazing. Just give me the functionality and give it me quick, then make it better. What it has to do is work. So it doesn't have to look the most beautiful thing in the world, but it has to work. So we have been sacrificing probably some user experience in some areas of internal apps to develop something and capabilities quick. But those ugly applications, which I'll get shot for saying, they still have to work, right? And that's the quality. The quality then comes from delivering the functionality rather than the overall appearance, etc. So we have sacrificed a little of that, but that's what you get when you try and do something brand spanking new and change direction and get that out quick. So that's changed what would normally be our mindset to say, no way, that doesn't go out yet, it doesn't look good enough. That's prioritized us a little bit on the business roadmap to say, I don't care if it looks good, we need that capability, get it to me quick. So that's one side of it. The other thing is that the products can be complicated. So our world is dealing with marine insurance, with terrorism insurance, with COVID insurance. You know, we're looking at some real complicated rated engines, products, etc. And the London market and our insurance domain kind of dictates that these products are quite complicated. So that from a quality perspective, that one of the practices that we're trying to put in place is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
I love that. I love that, Alan. I love it.
Just try and keep it as simple as possible. You can make things, and what you tend to find when you deal with very, very high grade testers and really intelligent developers, they love to send man to the moon in every situation. So you kind of have to make sure that, just as Natalie was saying with your story refinement and your backlog, get the product down to exactly what it is so that you can get your test cases in, so you know what the product's going to deliver, put it in a pipeline, and then automate that testing through it, because that's how you can iteratively bring it out and get it out quicker to do the product and what the product needs. Yeah, what else was I going to say? Speed to market is going to be key for a lot of this stuff. So you don't ever want to sacrifice quality when you're going out to the public facing users usually, but at the moment with the way things are with COVID and the actual change in what's required of us, we are seeing more of a need to get something out quicker and then improve it quicker. So instead of doing a big release or waiting a while and doing another one, it's very, very fast release process that we're trying to get to. And that's not so much a quality thing, but it's allowing us to kind of not be so tight on quality as long as we improve it quickly and get there quicker.
Yeah, I know, Alan, in our prep call that we had, we talked a lot about the cultural shift when it comes to quality. And, you know, I think many of the audience here perhaps is going through a transition from manual testing to automation. And, you know, how do we kind of get the culture of the team involved in really driving that automation? Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like for you at Arch?
So we're kind of at Arch at the moment. We're Arch UK or Arch International. We're just on the start of our automation journey, as you guys know. But what we have, as I said, is very complicated products. But when we're going out to our users or we're going out to the public or our brokers are clever people. They know about insurance, but keeping things simple is important, right? So just because these products are complicated, the actual use of the applications we're putting out there shouldn't be. So again, a couple of the conversation we had with Natalie before was if the only people that can write the tests for the products that we're putting out there are the developers, we've got a problem.
Yeah, we
have a real problem. So the ability for an end user or for an intelligent test person to do more detailed testing, to bring that out so that we know how the application should work and what it looks like to test is really important to us. And yes, we talk about shift left. So get testing done as early as possible. That does not mean that your testing gets done by the people that write the product. What it means is that the testing is part of the sprints, it's part of the development, it's part of that culture of actually building and testing, and that habit starts to form. And you know, you've got to make sure that developers love to code. Development teams will always love to code, but you've got to also make sure from your requirements and your metrics perspective that there's enough in there for people to actually pick up and understand what the product's meant to do, and then write that repeatable test case for it. So what we've started to find with, certainly with the UI testing that we've been doing with Mabl, is that we can start to write test case, but a non-development person be able to record and repeat those tests. So they can actually just use the application as it is and say whether it works or not. And as part of doing that, record it. And after that, it repeats itself. So culturally, you have to get away, or we've had to get away in terms of automating, just relying on the clever development people that are writing the products to do the testing. And to do that, you have to enable power users or super users or professional QA testers, if you've got such a thing, to be able to repeat and test and tell you whether it works as it should be.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for that. Natalie, can you talk a little bit about priorities for 2021? We're just kind of rounding out Q3. I'm sure you're starting to plan for what's up for next year. Any key themes that you're thinking about from a quality perspective that are perhaps different than things you would have done in the past?
Sure, definitely. So obviously the 2021 plan got interrupted by COVID, definitely. But our priorities, of course, before we get into the application piece, is the safety of our employees, the safety of our customers, and of course, business continuity. So we're not rushing back to the office without a well-defined, flushed out plan and a completed pilot. So we have an amazing COVID task force working closely with the CDC to determine when it's appropriate for us to go back to the office. And I'm sure there are some essential workers there right now, but the majority of employees are remote. I'm sure all of you are as well. As it relates to the our automation rollout, some of our application teams had to put a pause due to some reshifting of resources. So going back to 2021, we would need to pick that back up. And next, we want to reevaluate our mobility testing plan, because everything's going mobile now, as you can see, and we definitely need to accelerate that plan. And that's one thing we need to look at as we get into 2021. So that's going to be our main priority.
That's a great point. Alan, any big priorities for you going into next year?
Be warned, I've just turned my volume up. So if I'm shouting now, that's because people were asking me to turn my volume. Apologies if I was quiet. I'm not usually quiet. I don't get accused of that. So going into 2021, what are we going to do? Oof. If anybody got a crystal ball, I don't. It's going to be much of the same. We're going to carry on working as we are. I think that the big things for us are going to be collaboration. How do we get collaboration across products, across teams? Our business appetite for change won't be sated. So we will certainly have a roadmap and an aggression to get stuff out that won't change based on this. Ironically, if anything, this current climate is just seeing our business say, there's other opportunities to go. Let's go even faster. Let's go and do more, which is unlucky to have. I know others aren't. I think we'll need to take advantage of a lot of market circumstances which are coming up. So there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to be there. So the thing for me is going to be about building out a repeatable product for actually delivery, not a product in terms of an application that's out there, but how do we get a pipeline and how do we get a process that we can put in and cookie cutter it so that we can actually get it into another team. So when the chief exec comes and says, we need to do this, we're all going in this direction, we can go, right, boom, drop a team in, put a structure in place, put strategies in place, and have that collaboration to just go for it and enable that real speed to market that they're going to demand off us, right? What does it mean in terms of where we're going to go? I genuinely have no idea. Anything could happen in the next half hour, right? Stingray kind of territory. But speed to market for us will be the kind of the driver. And to do that, for me at the moment, my focus is certainly going to be around how we can get a repeatable automation of build, release, and test, so that we've got a structure that works for everybody. And then how I can get at the moment we're in learn mode, so we're all trying to learn and kind of get that practice together. So it's how I can get the collaboration between the teams that aren't sitting next to together anymore. So when I've got a good team that's really good at testing and a great team which is really good at automated builds, how do I cross-fertilize all that knowledge so that we get best everywhere? And at the moment, for me, I think that's a big challenge with digital. With Zoom and remote working. That those water cooler conversations that you used to have don't exist. And when I put a meeting in 10, 20 people's diaries, they'll go, oh no. So it's how do you get that kind of enthusiasm to learn and cross teach one another? But that's where we'll end up being, I think.
Yeah. I don't think you're alone in that challenge. So, you know, I'm right there with you. I'm sure Natalie's there with you as well.
Yeah. We know that we're all zoomed out, right? We want to, see somebody live.
Natalie, I know when we talked earlier, you know, obviously, you've gone through this transition of automation. I think you're using Mabl now, and you talked about over the summer, kind of a pretty cool project that you kicked off. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and like what the impact there has been with Mabl?
Sure, absolutely. So right now, my team, of course, is all hands on deck supporting the various delivery teams to assist with the automation rollout of Mabl. But during the summer, we actually had the opportunity of hosting 12 interns. Then they all worked on Mabl. And in just 2 short weeks, the interns quickly learned Mabl, mastered it, and automated 9 of our applications. So that was pretty impressive. And a lot of the COE leads were like, well, that's impossible. They were only here for 2 weeks. How did they learn it? Because Mabl is easy to learn, right? So as far as Chris from my team, it took him about an hour or maximum 2 hours to really learn Mabl. I'm not saying you'll become an expert, but you'll know enough to be dangerous. You'll know enough to automate and be self-sufficient. So a lot of times automation programs, I would say, fail because you actually have a very high reliance on a separate QA automation team. But then when you have an automation program like Mabl, you're able to, your BAs can automate, your PM can automate, or whoever it is. I mean, it's because it's so easy to learn. You don't need to actually have a technical or programming experience to learn it. So that's why the interns, and they were extremely pleased with that. And that's all they were talking about all summer, how they learn a new tool. So I was really impressed and really pleased with that. And our leaders were as well. So.
That's great. So we made it simple enough for interns, which excites
me.
So, Alan, I'm going to put you on hold for a second because I know Matthew has a couple of questions. So Matthew, I'll let you pose the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Izzy. And we actually only have a couple of minutes left in this session. But Izzy, I had a question for you. We've heard from your panel about the short-term responses, quicker, adapting to customers' needs. Then they've been talking about looking ahead, some of the longer-term objectives, more collaboration, more speed, more automation. I'd just like to ask you, what are the big trends you're seeing? I mean, we're hearing a lot of people talking about COVID accelerating already existing trends to more cloud, more software as a service, particularly in the context of financial firms that have been more cautious in these areas.
Yeah, I guess there's 2 big things that we've been seeing, and Natalie and Alan touched on that, one of them, which is shift left. And I think shift left, as I think Alan said, it's not just about giving testing to developers, it's about moving testing earlier in the process from a requirements perspective, where, Natalie mentioned a lot of bugs are found, but doing things earlier in the process to identify failures earlier so you're not caught with them at the end of the pipeline, which obviously would slow you down from a release perspective. That's one of the big trends we see. And Mabl's done a lot to enable that from a branching, versioning, CLI, import, lots of capabilities there to enable teams to test earlier. The other trend that we've seen, especially from a financial services sector, is end-to-end testing, specifically for those things that are important for financial services, like PDFs, right? A lot of financial companies generate statements or broker account information, and all that information is on a PDF. And so Mabl's done a lot to enable automation of PDF testing without having to do anything manual. So that's probably the second trend we've seen, is end-to-end testing.
But thanks, Izzy. Thank you, Natalie. And thank you, Alan. Great session.